Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Wishwell Farms. I am currently standing in the basement of my house where I start all of our hydroponic tomato seeds. We're only several weeks away from our seeding date for our 2025 tomatoes. So I kind of wanted to show you the process I go through getting everything ready down here in my basement for seeding our tomatoes. So we're making some big changes down here in the lighting department. So normally I have two big grow lights up here, 1,000-watt bulbs. I believe they're sodium bulbs. They could be halide, whichever ones are the right ones for growing seedlings. Those are removed. I'll show you those out in my garage here in a minute. And they are being replaced with LED lights. So these new LED lights I'm putting up are from Grow Pros Solutions in California. And these have a white and blue and red spectrum, best for cloning or growing seedlings. They will help promote root development and short internodal growth. So it's going to help prevent the elongating problem that I've dealt with quite a bit in the past. So looking forward to seeing how well these will grow my new plants, the baby plants this year. One thing that's really nice about them is they daisy chain together, so I can just plug them in all together. And then one plug will plug these into my timer. That way I can have lights running for 16 hours above my tomato seedlings. As you can see here, I have these galvanized steel racks on top of my grow mats, germination mats. As soon as these seedlings sprout, they will shoot a taproot down, and they'll want to exit the rock wool and start sprawling across the bottom of the flat that they're growing in. And the roots will start spreading underneath the flat all over this germination mat. We don't want that. We want the roots to come out the bottom of the rock wool cube that will be sitting here and be air pruned. So, they're going to be sitting on top of this rack, and when the roots come out the bottom, they're going to hit air instead of this blue germination mat. When they hit the air, it's called air pruning. They will stop and they will start shooting their roots back up into that cube and fill that cube instead of growing through the cube all over the mat. And that's a big deal because they'll grow into each other's cubes, like the neighboring plant beside it, and it just gets to be a big tangled up mess, and you'll have all these roots underneath the flat that are going to have to be ripped apart. And obviously that's not good for the plant. We want that cube to be completely full of roots, all the roots contained within that rock wool cube, to give this plant the most robust, healthiest start it can possibly have. So these lights will hang somewhere up here. I'm not sure of the height yet. I'll have to confirm that height before I mount these lights. And these are the seed varieties that I will be growing. We have Geronimo, Torero, and I also have one called Ondero that must be back ordered because I didn't receive it with these seeds here. Hopefully those will come soon, so we'll have all of our seeds ready for seeding here in just a few weeks. Now back here on my entry door that goes outside, I will put this insulation up against the door to keep the cold from coming through, because we want to keep this room down here fairly warm. I'll also stick some of this insulation up in that crawl space hole to keep that cold air from coming down here. And then right here, I usually have like an elbow of duct work coming down to blow heat from our furnace out towards my crop. But we just had a new furnace put in and the folks removed it, so I'm gonna have to reinstall that, because it is a little chilly down here. We want it to be, in the 70s at least. Now when it comes to germination temperature, we're gonna set these grow mats. I'll have thermometers in the rock wool cubes, so I know how warm it's getting. Because even though I might have this thermostat controller here set, let's say at 80, that's not always the temperature of the cubes that will be setting here. Sometimes this might say 80 and they might be 100 there. So, usually it's right around 65 is where I have to set this like this zone controller here. I'll have this sticking in the rock wool cubes, and then I'll have maybe 4 or 5 thermometers kind of scattered throughout so I can check them regularly to make sure they're not getting too warm. We want that temperature to be right around 82 degrees for about 3 days, and then we'll start seeing the seed sprout, and then we'll turn that back down to maybe mid 70s during the day, and then never lower than mid 60s. 62 to 64 for the nighttime temperature is kind of where we want to be at, but no lower than that, or you'll start hindering the growth of the plant. When it gets below 60, you'll start seeing purpling on the undersides of the leaves, and that is a sign that you're too cold and that the plant is not taking up phosphorus. So we need to keep that minimum temperature above 64 degrees. As far as getting water down here, I have a series of valves here from the main water line, and I will fill up this barrel and add sulfuric acid to it to get the pH to 5.8. So it'll be pH corrected water, and then I will also mix in a starter fertilizer of around 2 EC, give or take. Yeah, 1.8 to 2.2, somewhere in that area. And then instead of using a sprinkler can to dunk down in there to water my plants, I will just transfer some to this yellow tub. I will warm the water up with this tank heater to temper the water slightly so it's not 55 degrees, which is what it is coming out of the well. And then I will grab my trays, bring them over here, not submerge them, but just set them in the water, and then they will absorb. That rock wool soaks it right up like a sponge. And then I'll just bring them back over and carry them up here. That way I'm not actually sprinkling water over the top of the plants themselves. A lot of times they'll get wet and heavy and they'll want to fall over, and then you're fighting a tangled up mess of plants that have fallen over into each other. And then, but the main reason is there's a risk of spreading diseases when the plants are wet. They don't dry out as fast down here in the basement as they would out in the greenhouse. So we just like to water them from below at the root level and keep the leaf tissue itself dry as we can. All right, here are the 2,000-watt lights that I'm no longer going to be using in my basement. I just removed them. They have big old bulbs up there, 1,000-watt bulbs. They produce a ton of heat, and they're very expensive. And they do go bad over time. Even though they might be producing light and not burn out, they do wear out over time and not giving you maybe the right color spectrum or something, I don't know. But since I'm not using those in my basement anymore, I am going to add them to the growing area out in my small seeding house, where I have 2 already. I'll be adding those 2 to it, so we'll have a total of 4. It'll give me a little larger area that I can spread my plants out on and continue getting that 14 to 16 hours of daylight that they need during late winter when the days are still pretty short. So let's go out there and I'll show you where they're gonna go. All right, I still haven't cleaned up this mess. It's on the list to get done this week. Now that Christmas is over, this is a top priority to get ready. Same type of lights with the 1,000-watt bulbs. So I only got 2 up there. They're probably higher than they need to be. You know, they should be down here probably at 4 to 6 feet or something like that. But I want them up out of the way so I don't hit my head on them. I'll add those other 2 right up here somewhere just past them. I'll probably tighten up the spacing a little bit. They're probably 6 or 7 feet apart right now. Maybe I'll move them like 4 or 5 feet apart, and I might lower them a little bit. But this is where I'll be not starting all my plants, but where I'll be bringing all my seedlings out to finish growing as a transplant. So those plants are only going to be in my basement for about 3 weeks, no more than 3 weeks. By then, the true leaves will have emerged. The cotyledons will come up out of the seed first, and then the first 2 true leaves will come out. And when they start expanding and almost touching each other, that's when they need moved into their 4-inch rock wool blocks, or stone wool, cutiline, whatever you want to call it. A lot of different brand names out there. We use Grodan rock wool. So they're going to be started in a little 1-inch cube, and I'll show you what those look like here in a little bit. And then when they're about 3 weeks old, they'll be brought out here and transferred into a 4-inch block. And that will give them enough room to spread out and start really growing and taking off and become a full-size transplant after about 7 or 8 weeks total from seeding time. So 3 weeks in the basement, 4 to 5 weeks out here, and then they'll be ready to be taken into the larger greenhouse and set in the Dutch Beto buckets that are full of perlite, and that's where they will remain for the entirety of their lives, from, you know, a 1 foot tall plant to 20 feet tall, however long they are when we terminate them in September or October. All right, I opened up one box of this rock wool, also known as stone wool. This comes from a company called Grodan, and they call it rock wool. So you can see these little starter cubes here. This is what I was talking about. So the seed will be dropped into this little hole, and then I'll cover it with vermiculite just so it has something to kind of anchor itself to, because you don't want them to like heave up out of the hole. We want them to sprout and shoot their roots down into this cube. And you know, after a couple days, that taproot's going to want to come right out the bottom of this and keep on sprawling and growing all around the bottom. If that's where the moisture is and the heat is, which is where it would be if they were laying right on that germination mat in my basement, we don't want that to happen. That's why I propped them up off the germination mat with those racks you saw down there. We want the roots to come out the bottom, air prune themselves, and then fill this cube up completely. And then when the plant is about 2.5 or 3 inches tall and has, you know, a little bit of a wingspan on it, about like that, of true leaves, they're going to be touching all the other plants, because there's 100 plants that'll be seeded on this one slab. Then you can see these have little perforations. They'll tear off. I'll tear each one of these off and place it into these holes. And these 4-inch cubes, there's only 10 of them to a flat. So we go from 100 down to 10. And they'll stay in here and grow about 12 to 16 inches tall. And they'll start getting little tomato buds at the top that are going to be opening up into flowers. And sometimes the flowers will actually start to open in the transplant house, the seeding house. But by the time those open up, it's usually about the time we want to move them to the big greenhouse and set them in the Dutch Beto buckets. And that's usually the 7 or 8 week time frame from the time of seeding. So that's kind of a quick short summary of how that process is going to work. Right now I'm going to go back down to my basement and start finishing up things down there, get those lights hung. So we are ready to seed 2025 tomatoes. All right, I'm completely finished with the new lighting setup down here in my basement, and I wanted to make sure I was able to raise and lower it very quickly and easily. So as you can see up here, I just screwed some eye bolts and put a S hook there with a cheap piece of chain, and then I got these hooks screwed into the wood, and these metal clips came with the light setup. So I just screwed them on the underside of the wood, and then the lights snap right into those metal brackets. So these lights pop right out real quick and easy. And as you can see, they're all daisy chained together. I'll show you what it looks like when I turn them on. I just have them plugged into my germination mat timer right now, just so you can see how they work. Oh yeah, look at that. Looks good. I contacted the company and they told me that approximately 1 foot above the crop is the ideal height, never closer than 6 inches. So I'll probably have to raise it up a little bit, because this is what it will look like when I plant my seeds. They will sprout up out of these little holes, and it looks like I'm probably only about 8 inches above them right now. So I'll have to raise it up a little bit, obviously. And then when the plants are a couple weeks old, you know, they'll be up here about 2 to 3 inches tall, and then I'll have to raise the lights a little bit higher. But I think this is gonna work out really well. If you are interested in learning more about the lights that I installed today, I'm gonna put a link to the company down in the description box below for you. The name of the company is GrowPro. They are out of Chino, California. And the lights that I installed are probably the cheapest ones they offer. They are for cloning and for young seedling growth, for helping develop strong, robust root systems, and keeping your internode length short, so you don't get those long stretching plants like a lot of lights, well, different light spectrums will cause. So this has the right light spectrum of white, blue, and red for that. But they have a wide array to select, all different sizes and shapes of lights for your application. It's hard to believe that we're only 3 weeks away from seeding our first tomato crop of 2025. So be on the lookout for that video coming up here real soon. And if you want to see us seeding our first crop of the 2024 season this past January, I will put that video up right here so you can check that one out. This is where we're going to wrap this one up today, folks. As always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you all again real soon down the farm. Happy New Year.